What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gooner channel. Arsenal 2, Fulham 2. And I don't think it's a result any of us are happy with. Obviously, you would expect to win your home games if you're title challengers. And, it was a disappointing game. And I've left it overnight because I wanted to have some time to process how I felt about it. And look, the first thing we all do when a result doesn't go the way we want is we look for reasons, we look for people to blame. And the consensus, judging by the reactions online, not just amongst our fan base, but across the football world, have been that it's very clearly a couple of people that we need to point a finger at. Now, the first is Mikel Arteta. The obvious questions are, why is Gabriel starting on the bench? Why is Thomas Partey starting at right back? And why is he persisting with Kai Havertz when he really hasn't brought anything to the team? Is this just another player that he signed from Chelsea like Willian, where he won't admit it's not working and will keep playing him to the detriment of our results? Now, I don't like anything else. I don't think it's as simple as that. And I want to kind of address those points. And it does kind of centre around Kai Havertz. We do have to accept that, all right, let me put it to you this way. If you are in the minority of Arsenal fans who think that Kai Havertz was the right decision and that he does offer the team something, his off-the-ball work, his pressing and his key passing ability and his ability to take up space as a Raumdeuter, if you're in that camp, then my question to you is simply, do you think that if we'd gone with the first team from last season and put Declan Rice in instead of Granit Xhaka, do you think it would have been a better performance? Now, I know Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus weren't fully fit or weren't considered fit enough to start, but I think that you would have to be really staunch in your view about Kai Havertz to support him in the game yesterday. Now, I do accept that hindsight is 2020 and that you might have hoped that he would have played better and it wasn't one of his better games, but, that can happen. So was it just a mistake from Mikel Arteta? Before we get really into it, I want to say my takeaway from last season is that we did a fantastic job. Arteta has done and is doing a great job as Arsenal manager. We are in a completely different position. We're in a conversation as title challengers. We weren't really even in a conversation as top four before. So there has been improvement, but we do need to kick on this season and see more improvement. Last season, I felt that we were over-reliant on a first 11, that he didn't trust his squad enough, and that they didn't have the tactical variation to take on different games. And what I mean by that is that it's okay to have a style of play. Under Wenger, we very much had our game and we tried to impose that on everybody else. And when we had some of the best players in the world in all those positions, it was easier to do that. But as the quality of players deteriorated, there were times where we were horribly exposed and teams figured out how to play against us. Even the great managers change. The context of a game changes, so they change. And a great example of that is last season where Man City had been so successful for so long without a front man number 9, and suddenly they brought in Erling Haaland and changed the way they played completely. So I'm not talking about the massive changes, but what I am also talking about is when someone like Pep Guardiola, who is a disciple of Cruyff, who believes passionately in possession and space and managing that space and creating that space with rigid disciplined formation, with rigid disciplined tactical structure, he came to the Emirates and gave us 65% of the possession because he could understand that they had a better chance in doing that of taking the 3 points. And it worked. And we have seen tactical variation from Pep Guardiola. And I think Arteta is aware that he needs that in his armoury as well. And so this season, we have gone out and we have added to the squad to give him more depth, more options from the bench, which I think is a great thing. But that changing of the tactics seems to be happening in the season when actually you would hope that it would be more gradual. For a home game against Nottingham Forest, I could absolutely understand why you would start with Thomas Partey and take Gabriel Magalhaes out, why you probably aren't going to need Thomas Partey to do a lot of right-back duties. We're going to be playing the game in their half. And although we did go a goal down, we really looked in control of that game. And there was a spell there when it was 2-1 where it was a little bit worrying, but overall I was confident all the way through. For the away trip to Palace, I thought that we'd play slightly differently. But again, we didn't look as imposing as we might want to. We didn't maybe capitalise on the chances as we should have done, but we didn't really look in any trouble. And we took 6 points from 6 points. So any criticism of Arteta had to be measured in the context of, if you get 6 points from 6 points, he's doing something right. Yesterday was a game I was really expecting us to dominate. And admittedly, I thought Paulinho was going to be injured or not playing, and he is a Rolls Royce of a midfielder. I am surprised that with today's current market valuations that he isn't being snapped up when all the talk is around players like Lavia, and you can understand why Fulham slapped the huge valuation on him when they did, when West Ham were interested. So, of course, the Fulham team that turned up were in better shape. Their manager may well be leaving soon, but yesterday he was fully committed, and I give credit to the Fulham performance. We, of course, made it incredibly difficult for ourselves. So hindsight is 2020. Seeing that he'd once again left Gabriel out, I wasn't overly troubled by it. I still felt that Partey would be in midfield more. But yesterday didn't turn out how we wanted it to. So we're looking at it now saying he should have gone for a more settled side. Whether you're a disciple of Kai Havertz or not, you have to wonder if we'd started with last season's first 11. Jesus and Zinchenko aren't fully fit, but if we had, surely we'd have gotten a better result. The first thing about that game was it felt annoyingly like some of the games towards the end of the season. And in this calendar year, we have now conceded in the first minute 3 times. And I really struggle to understand how that's even possible. At home, each time, set up, we know exactly where we're supposed to be. Surely in the first minute, you should be able to repel an attack. You should be able to defend. Yesterday's goal, we lost possession cheaply, and the shot, Ramsdale completely out of position. Now, Cruyff famously, when he wanted his goalkeeper to get more involved in the game and not on his goal line, was asked what would happen if the opposition got the ball and the keeper was out of position. And he famously said, well, then they'll score. And of course, Cruyff believed very much in scoring 1 goal more than anyone else. But for us, it just puts an unnecessary pressure on us. And I did look at that goal a lot and wonder how it was possible that Ramsdale was so completely out of position once the shot is taken that he can't get anything on it. I'm not trying to be deliberately overly critical of Ramsdale. It is obviously a huge pressure on us if we're going to concede in the first minute. And perhaps this is going to lead to a change in the goalkeeping position, because we do now have a player on the bench who might arguably be a better goalkeeper. I'm not sure where you stand on that, and I'm going to wait and see what Arteta's response is. I said before that this was Ramsdale's position to lose, but in the first 3 games of the season, we have now conceded 3 goals. And yesterday's first goal was down to Ramsdale, even if the second one was more down to the defence as a whole. So maybe there is something that Arteta needs to look at in terms of getting the team fired up properly and a little less complacent. That's point 1. To come back to the issue around Gabriel Magalhaes starting or not, I don't think I was really particularly worried about it. I thought, yet again, this is a 3-point game for us. Whatever we do, we're going to put a team out there that's going to be good enough, and it didn't turn out that way. So Arteta is going to take some of the blame for preparing us properly and for the fact that we do concede in the first minute, and that's not good enough. Something does have to be done about that. The key issue, though, let's come back to it, is Gabriel Magalhaes starting on the bench because we need to figure out how to play Kai Havertz at all costs. Kai Havertz is a hugely divisive player. Obviously, with hindsight being 2020 and Kai Havertz not having a good game, it makes no sense to keep him on, and he was substituted. If the idea is to give us more tactical variation, I think if we're looking at Kai Havertz as a Raumdeuter, he's supposed to be able to occupy space that gets left. So when you start with Trossard and Martinelli, you have more mobility with Kai Havertz, because if Martinelli and Trossard want to interchange, then Kai Havertz can just read the game and pick up space. But it didn't happen yesterday. The easiest thing in the world is to drop Kai Havertz now and go back to a formation that we're all more used to. And does that, again, bring us into a position to not be tactically variable enough? Well, possibly. And that's something that we have to consider. Were we punished for not taking Fulham seriously enough? Actually, with hindsight, it does look that way. Because, you know, if you'd lined up with, let's say, Kivior and Ben White, Gabriel and Saliba, arguably a defensive unit that knows each other much better. I appreciate Kivior's new to that, but certainly making more wholesale changes leads to a disjointedness that you don't have if there's a more stable back four. The other question is, and you know, I find myself here again, 2020 hindsight. It was strange to drop Eddie Nketiah. The game against Palace, he was profligate with a couple of chances, but did give us the opportunity from the penalty spot with some quick running and clever play. And you know, it does seem harsh to bring Trossard in, but again, Trossard's one of the players that was a standout player in the pre-season and somebody that probably deserved minutes in the first couple of games. And so bringing him in, I wasn't hugely disappointed. So start of the game, I looked at it and thought this is definitely going to be a game where we take the 3 points. And even a goal down, I thought we showed discipline and determination and were able to pull it back. If they don't score the equaliser from the corner, we come away with a less than impressive 2-1 win, but we're on 9 points out of 9. We're at the top of the table. And how much criticism can you really have for a manager? Now, as a side note, it seems a lot because the Arsenal fans, sections of the Arsenal fans I've seen overnight and this morning have been actually calling for Arteta to leave, that he's not good enough. And I'm not going to address that in this video, but I am hosting a debate on this subject because I want to have this discussion in a clear thinking way rather than everyone just jumping on a bandwagon and immediately in a knee-jerk way saying Arteta's not good enough because he made mistakes. I think yesterday, whilst finger pointing and blaming is not necessarily useful, it is worth saying that decisions were made at the start of the game that hampered our chances of taking all 3 points. For the game against Manchester United, therefore, I think we're all hoping that we're not experimental. I'm sure I'm not the only one who wants us to line up against Manchester United next week with a settled back four. Hopefully Zinchenko's fit enough to start. Hopefully Ben White goes back to right back, and hopefully Gabriel Magalhaes is not being sold, and I don't think he is, and he will start alongside Saliba just to give us that defensive platform to build on. Declan Rice will play alongside Thomas Partey in midfield with Odegaard ahead of them, and our front three will have Jesus up front, or possibly even Eddie Nketiah, who is in great form, and maybe Jesus is the player to come off the bench. Yesterday, there were some pluses, and I do just want to quickly touch on them, and one of them is Vieira. So if, like me, you were questioning what he's doing in the squad and thinking of him as a weak element, I know I have in the past said that he should be compared to Pires because Pires in his first season at Arsenal wasn't particularly great. Maybe what we're seeing now is Vieira getting hold of it. He was outstanding. His run to get the penalty, which saw us equalise, was fantastic. And the ball to Eddie, that Eddie scored the goal from, was quality. And we saw a brand new Vieira. So positives there. And maybe that's what's going to happen with Kai Havertz given time. I think Arteta has to acknowledge that he's putting himself and Kai Havertz under too much pressure if he starts him against Manchester United. I do think Kai Havertz had a really good first couple of games, and the statistics will bear that out, but he didn't yesterday. It's a footballing cliche that when you don't get it right or when things don't go as you want them to, what you want is another game to come along with a chance to show what you're really made of. And we're getting that in Manchester United next weekend. They are in all kinds of bad shape at the moment. A much better game from Anthony yesterday, and they took hold of the game and were able to come away with a win despite going 2 goals down quickly against Nottingham Forest. They look vulnerable. They are not the team they were. And if we are going to have any realistic chance of winning the title this season, we need to take 3 points from that. And now it comes down to Arteta. Does he stick doggedly with what he believes in, or what he seems to believe in, given first games we've played this season? Does he stay with Kai Havertz? Does he leave Gabriel out? Does he put Thomas Partey in the right back position? I'm not an advocate of bowing to the pressure of the fans and giving them what they want. I don't want to get to a situation where there's a vote with all the fan base before the game to pick the team. The manager's vision is the most important thing, and Arteta's vision has taken us this far, and I believe will take us further. But if I worried last season that he didn't trust his bench enough, that he didn't tactically, wasn't variable enough, then this season I hope I'm not worrying that he's too dogmatic, that he's too determined to stick with what he believes will work, even if it doesn't get the points we need. I'll do a video about the Man United game closer, but my takeaway from yesterday was that it probably would have made more sense to start with a more settled defensive unit. That great teams build from the back, and the stable as you can be in the back, the better. That Thomas Partey really does do much better in the midfield, and if you're going to play him where he's best. That Kai Havertz probably is going to become a great player for us if Arteta thinks so, but there's no reason to do that all early. That if Jesus is fit, he should play, but Eddie showed yesterday for the first time, another positive, that he can come off the bench and make a difference. We do have a stronger bench. I am quietly optimistic about it, but I cannot understand a minority, a tiny section of Arsenal fans who flip-flop so much, who are all ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater, get rid of Arteta, even though the team that he's built together totally buys into his vision. He's given us the opportunity to go and sign Declan Rice because Declan Rice believes in the process. That we have achieved point score last season that was totally above what any of us anticipated. We scored goals in a free-flowing way that was more typical of the Invincibles than it has been of the last decade of Arsenal. I'm hugely behind Arteta, but even in being hugely behind Arteta, I do think that he has to be a little bit less dogmatic and a little less inflexible when he thinks he's right. Anyway, that's been my opinion, my view on it. I'd love to hear what you think, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching all the way through. I'm loving the involvement from you. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, then what are you waiting for? But Arsenal 2, Fulham 2, our first really big disappointment of the season. Let's hope there isn't another one for a little while. Till I see you again, be lucky. Lots of love.